Well, I mean, what we have here today is a tentative agreement. We have an agreement that came out of a couple days of bargaining, and I would say, I've been clear all along that the best deal is going to come from the bargaining table, and it was incredibly encouraging to have both of our bargaining teams spend a couple days at the bargaining table. And look what's come out of it. A tentative agreement we have, and an agreement that clauses that were agreed to by both parties to take to the STF membership. And certainly, I mean, the ratification process starts now, and at the end of the day, that's going to be up to the STF membership. I think we have a really good agreement on the table here. We've got the largest ever. We've got the largest compensation increase for teachers in Saskatchewan since 2011. 3% in the first year, 3% in the second year, 2% in the third year. It's going to keep our Saskatchewan teachers above the Western Canadian average. We've got the largest increase to school operating funding for next year's school year. We've obviously got the multi-year funding agreement to ensure that classroom supports funding are set at a minimum floor over the next 4 years. I think there's some good things in this agreement that are good for teachers, are good for the province. At the end of the day, good for students to ensure that we don't have sanctions going forward that affect obviously curricular time, but all the extracurriculars and important things like graduation as well.
So are you saying that a final offer and a tentative agreement are synonymous, or
No, I'm saying that we have a tentative agreement coming out of bargaining yesterday.
That's not what we've heard. We've heard that this was a final offer. I'm kind of hoping you could parse out the syntax difference there, because it seems as though this is an offer that's not being taken to the members, but it's not a tentative agreement. There doesn't appear to be that sort of cohesion towards the teachers' side.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a conversation with the chair of the GTBC this morning, Don Hoyam, who, I'll just say Don's done incredible work over the last couple of days to get us, I'd say both sides to this point. If you're taking something to members, that's a tentative agreement. And, I can't control how the STF chooses to communicate about this, but again, what we have, our understanding from the GTBC side of things coming out of yesterday and the last 2 days of bargaining is that we have a tentative agreement and that the STF was going to take that to their membership for ratification.
Okay, and if that falls through, is there any additional movement that might come from the GTBC side, or is this ultimately the final line in the sand? There's not going to be any movement after this point?
Well, certainly I'm hopeful that the STF membership chooses to ratify this agreement and that we don't have to go down that path. As I said, we've got in the agreement has the largest compensation increase for teachers since 2011. There's significant additional investment being made into pre-K to 12 education. And at the end of the day, think about the last several weeks that we've seen across the province. We know that these sanctions have incredible impacts on kids. Well, we're going to have to wait to see what the STF membership.
But is there a new deal coming if this offer is rejected?
I'm going to wait for the STF membership to see if they ratify this vote.
Just what do you think about the line about the government honoring this framework?
Well, I'd say the conversation around the accountability framework really started after budget, in terms of, the STF leadership having some questions about, is government serious about this commitment? And we are. And, we have an MOU that we'll sign with the SSBA government and the STF to make sure that there is accountability frameworks developed in local school divisions. And, I think for teachers to have voice and be able to provide feedback to school divisions on how those funding dollars are allocated in school communities all across the province, that's a good thing. And that's something that government's serious about honoring. That's why there's a reference to the MOU in the contract. And, I do think teachers should have voice in terms of, how education is delivered in the province.
You previously said you didn't want classroom sizes and complexity negotiated or didn't want that part of the contract. Yep. So how do you feel about this, given that in the past you said you did not want those items in the contract?
Yeah, certainly. So, we don't have the multi-year funding agreement in the contract. That was something that, as government, I wasn't willing to go there. Again, certainly we from the beginning, we believe that school divisions ultimately need the capacity to make important decisions around how resources are allocated. But I do think that there is an opportunity that should be there for teachers to provide feedback directly to school board decision makers on how those resources are allocated. I think what the accountability framework will allow for that. at a local level, and looking forward to seeing how we can move forward with, again, local teachers, school boards, and government all working together to really improve education here in Saskatchewan.
Is that a concession on your end to have this in the proposed contract?
I would say that there's been several areas where government has moved. I've canvassed that quite often out here in the Rotunda as well in the House. At the end of the day, you've seen government make significant additional investments into education, and we believe that ultimately school boards are going to make those decisions, but that there should be opportunity for teacher voice. And I think that's a reasonable position for government to take, and I hope that that's part of getting us to a ratified deal here.
What does reference to the MOU? That's how it was described in the STF.
Yeah, so the MOU is not part of the agreement, but there's an article in the agreement that references that the MOU exists and that we are going to honor it.
Why has this gone from a 4-year to a 3-year contract? Just looking specifically at compensation, it's 3%, 2%, and I believe previously it was over 4 years, 3%, correct? Or it worked out to 9%.
Yeah,
why is this now a 3-year instead of a 4-year?
So obviously when both parties put their opening offer on the table, our opening offer was a 3-year deal. The STF's opening offer was a 4-year deal. We did have the conversation about the length of the deal. It's interesting because if you think back several weeks ago, with the multiple compensation offers that we did have on the table, the quote-unquote MLA deal that we've talked about, we would have been willing to do a longer term, but I think we came to a mutually agreed upon term length of 3 years.
Is government forcing this to vote under the Education Act?
No, so and I've seen some buzz about that online. You have to remember that the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation doesn't fall under the Saskatchewan Employment Act, and there's not a similar provision around forcing a vote around a final offer in either the Education Act or the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation Act.
I just want to ask you about Miss Thomas.
Yep.
You met with her earlier this week, and
Yep.
quote, you told her, "What do they want me to do? Give up my firstborn child?" Why did you tell her that?
That was a really poor choice of words on my part, and I apologized for that. And I'm human. I made a mistake. It was a really poor choice of words on my part.
And when did you apologize to her about that?
I apologized in the meeting with her that I had the other day.
Do you know? I know you're saying it's a poor choice of words. Were you just caught up, like heat of the moment type thing? You were talking about the teachers deal at that point. Do you know why it came out?
Yeah, it was just a really poor choice of words on my part. As as soon as I came out of my mouth, I knew it was a poor choice of words. And I think back to my late friend, the former member for Regina Wall-Shakers, somebody who worked in this building and lost a child. No parent should have to do that, and it was a really poor choice of words on my part.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just with respect to the contract, we heard from Samantha Beacott that there's been damage done to the relationship between teachers, school boards, the government, etc. I was hoping to get your comment on that, because through this process we've heard from teachers that there's been a perceived disrespect from the GTPC, from the offers, etc. And with this final offer or tentative agreement, there seems to be some path to benefits. But how do you repair that relationship? Because we've heard quite conclusively, I think quite consistently from people, that there is a feeling of being spurned, a feeling of being disrespected by the government at this round of negotiations.
Certainly, I think where we're at today with a tentative agreement being taken to members, that's really positive from where we've been. If you think over the last several months, this is one of the most positive spots we've been in, and I certainly hope that the STF membership takes a serious opportunity to look at what's on the table and make a decision as to what's going to be best for students going forward. In terms of relationships in the sector, I've talked about this before. I've spent a lot of time on the road visiting with school divisions, visiting schools, talking with teachers and parents, and school division employees around the province. Certainly, people in this province can count on the fact that I'm going to get back out on the road and be working to build relationships. And you build relationships and build trust by showing up. And I think I've said to Ms. Beacott directly before that, certainly I want to get to a place where we have a better relationship. Bargaining is tough, right? Bargaining is tough. There's not a lot of winners when it comes to bargaining, and I think nobody's lost more throughout this whole process than our kids in this province. But as minister, I'm absolutely committed to being out on the ground and building those relationships and building the trust between school boards, teachers, myself, others, professionals in the sector, and parents as well, to ensure that we're all working together to really improve education as best as possible in this province.
And the language of the MOU, it doesn't have binding discipline or any sort of binding language within it, does it?
Well, again, it's an agreement that we have between the three parties, and there's a commitment from all three parties to honor that. And again, that's the article that's in the contract, is that it will be honored and followed.
Honored but not binding.
Honored and followed.
I'm just curious about your own approach to this vote. Do you just let the process play out and stay in the sidelines and let it see what happens, or do you feel compelled to maybe communicate your own thoughts to teachers about take the deal or whatever? Just get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the decision for ratification is going to be up to the STF membership around the province. I've talked about before about the additional investments that we've made into the education sector, and those are I've spent a lot of time on the record talking about those additional investments. At the end of the day, the ratification vote is up to STF membership. I respect that process, and certainly I hope. I do hope that this deal is ratified, because I think that's what's best for kids in this province, is to move forward through this bargaining process. We have a good deal on offer here, and it's an opportunity to ensure that our kids can be back in the classroom and back on the track and field, back on the track this spring, and to make sure that there's no sanctions for the rest of the school year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Oh, no, you don't. I didn't even